Guys, have you ever run into that person of the opposite sex, or I guess in some cases the same sex? Who's judging? It's not up to me. But you run into that person and they look great, and they basically communicate with you in public a lot and on the phone. I mean, they talk the best game in the world. I mean, you talk about some phone sex, Lord have mercy. Some of them are professionals. But everybody's telling you that that person, there's something wrong, that they are not all they're cracked up to be, that they're bullshitting you and you're too stupid to realize it. But all you can think about is that great phone sex, or how much they pump you up in public, and how good they may potentially look. But they know how to push all your right buttons. And then it comes time for the reckoning. And when you find out that you've been had, i.e., your bank account is empty, your car is gone, you got credit card bills up the ass, and when an investigation is done, it was that person, you feel like a goddamn fool. But unfortunately, the damage is already done, and hopefully not beyond repair. Let me put this another way. Remember your Greek mythology and Helen of Troy and Paris, the prince fell in love with this chick, but she was married to another man. He snatched her up and kept her, and since she was married to a king, he called in all of his king buddies, and they went to get his wife back by any means necessary. And they laid siege to the city of Troy, but they just couldn't get over. But then they had this wascally wabbit, this thinker, who said, well, we might not be able to take them by force, but we'll let their own stupidity overcome them. They had already invested 10 years. They figured out what's another 3 months, because they were getting ready to give up the ghost. So Ulysses decides that the way to get these guys to destroy themselves is to appeal to their vanity, appeal to their want and desire to please someone, to get something that they actually had no right to obtain because they hadn't worked for it. It was a freebie. I.e., Ulysses builds the Trojan horse. His army apparently leave. The people from Troy come out, see the coast is clear, everybody's gone, and they see this giant horse, which was a pagan symbol for one of their goddesses. I forget which one it was. I think it was Athena. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure it was Athena. Anyway, they roll the horse inside the walls. Everybody goes to sleep. And out pop all of these soldiers. First thing they do is open the gates so all their buddies who had been hiding can pile in there. And then they sack the city of Troy. Basically, the city was destroyed from within. Not just the soldiers that destroyed it, but it was destroyed from within because the people allowed themselves to be taken in. Well, I just spent 5 minutes basically giving you a small history lesson and then a lesson about dealing with the wrong female or wrong male, depending on which side you're running from. I said all that to say that we have a Trojan horse inside of our government, inside of our country. And that Trojan horse was allowed to come in because he sweet-talked everybody that he needed to. And no matter how much we talked about him being a degenerate, a liar, a thief, a fraud, a crook, he was saying enough of the right things for those people who really needed to hear the right things to go along with the program. So, with that being said, being destroyed from within. We're being destroyed, number one, by the cabinet that Mr. Trump has put together. And I absolutely am not saying that every single one of these people is out to destroy the country. And on the contrary, I would say that, in my opinion, there's really only one of them up there, Mr. Bannon, who really wants to do significant harm to the country as far as government is concerned. But there are a lot of individuals up there that will do harm because they don't know what the hell they're doing. And again, some of these people up here are very competent in the jobs that they have. But it only takes a few in key positions to take us down the drain. Now, first of all of those Russian connections that Mr. Trump claims were non-existent, he and his people, Sean Spencer, Reince Priebus, etc., soar up and down. There was no contact with the Russians. Well, we all know that turned out to be a lie. One of the people that you don't see up here obviously had a major contact with the Russians. That person's name is Michael Flynn. He was the National Security Advisor. That man lied on multiple occasions about contacts he had both before, during, and after the campaign, and obviously he resigned. But it was clear to see that he was in the Russians' pocket. He had gotten paid by the Russians to deliver speeches. He had direct contact with Vladimir Putin. He was in constant, and I do mean constant, even though it has only been revealed that he made contact with the Russian ambassador 3 times. Come on, folks, we know it was a lot more than that. But let's just say it was 3 times. 3 times was enough. It was before, during, and after the Trump campaign. And I'm not even talking about when he was over in Russia giving speeches. So he's gone. You have Mr. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions. If you don't recognize his picture, he's the one on the top line, second from the right. He lied about having contacts with the Russians, and first it was he never had any. Then he basically came across them. Then, yeah, he met with them, but only in his position as a U.S. Senator, which was funny because he was operating as a surrogate during the Republican National Convention. He wasn't acting as a senator then. That's one of the times that he met with them. Another time he met with them was at his office Now, what the hell is the Russian ambassador doing at his office with only his staff? And the funny thing part about it was the Russian ambassador didn't meet with anybody else on the judiciary, the Judiciary Committee. I believe that's which committee it was. So he got busted, and obviously he's recused himself now from any FBI investigations into the Trump campaign, period. Then you have Mr. Wilbur Ross. If you don't recognize him, which most people won't, he is the third from the left on the bottom. Now, he's interesting because his Russian tie is the fact that he is the major controlling shareholder of the Bank of Cyprus. Now, you may not know anything about the Bank of Cyprus, so let me tell you. The Bank of Cyprus is the banks that the Russians use to launder their money. Specifically to launder their money. He is the chairman of that particular board, and there are two co-chairmen that are underneath him, one of which was a Russian oligarch. He basically decided to retire from Russian politics, whatever, being Putin's buddy. Well, I guess he still is Putin's buddy. But he immediately moved to Cyprus, where Mr. Ross made him one of the sub-co-chairmen underneath him. Everybody up in that bank is loaded, and it is documented that the Russians run their ill-gotten funds specifically through that bank, since Deutsche Bank got busted, and there was another large bank that got busted and paid huge fines. But I saved the best for last. Mr. Rex Tillerson. He has major direct contacts with Vladimir Putin and the Russian government. Those contacts came through his dealings as chairman of the Exxon Corporation, where he signed a $500 billion oil deal that got put on hold when the U.S. put sanctions in place against Russia for the Ukrainian situation. Well, Mr. Tillerson has received the highest civilian award that is presented by the nation of Russia. He has met with Mr. Vladimir Putin on multiple occasions, and Putin considers him to be one of his best buds. Now, that in itself might not be that big of a deal, unless these guys got their marching orders. Now, in the case of Jeff Sessions, his job as the people's attorney, but in all actuality, his job is to protect Donald Trump's rear end by obviously not filing lawsuits and taking the country down as far as denying rights for the people, denying to go after those that are violating the rights of the people, which obviously is going to upset a lot of people and create strife. That's one. Wilbur Ross, well, he's just a money guy that's going to help with the Russians' ability to move monies, and more than likely going to try to, along with Tillerson, get sanctions lifted so that the Russians can operate economically in a more free and clear environment. Mr. Tillerson, on the other hand, is another story. I don't believe, and I don't think many people believe, that we're actually going to get into any kind of a major shooting war with the Russians. And obviously we have a much greater military. Just look at the $600 billion a year we spend, and they spend less than, I'm going to say they spend around 100, if it's that much. So militarily, other than nukes, we are vastly superior to them. But that being said, our number one claim to fame is our State Department. Our State Department truly is, even at this moment, the leader of the world as far as getting stuff done, organizing, and pulling people together. Well, at least it was until Mr. Tillerson got there. Now, just so that you're aware, Mr. Tillerson, by himself, is beginning to dismantle our State Department. At the present time, he does not have an Assistant Secretary of State or any, and I do mean any, Deputy Secretaries of State. After he gave that quote-unquote nice little speech to the State Department workers, he began to decimate the State Department. He started firing non-political people with decades of experience, and he has gutted an entire level so that at the present time, there are no layers directly beneath him. He's got to go down 2 layers in order to get to people who are actually in positions that are actually doing work. And it's been indicated that other than the Assistant Secretary of State, which he's in no hurry since his choice got shot down by Donald Trump, he's in no hurry to look for one. So he's going to be flying solo for what could be quite a long time. Sorry about that, folks. But if our State Department is not operating at anywhere near peak efficiency, there's another little tidbit to throw into the ringer. In the budget that Mr. Trump is suggesting to the House of Representatives, he is proposing to cut the State Department budget by approximately 37%, which for all intents and purposes basically neuters the State Department. It's so bad that you had military people, generals, both active and retired, that have gone on record complaining about those potential cuts. Because it's the State Department, through diplomacy, that helps to save military lives. And even the most ardent military guy recognizes that. But for some reason, when Mr. Tillerson was asked, excuse me, about the potential cuts in the State Department budget, he had no comment. I don't know about you folks, but if somebody is getting ready to, has given me a job, and then turns around and says, I got to do that job with a third less in resources that I had, I would more than likely be more than upset. I'd probably be screaming blue murder and threatening to quit if that went down. And Mr. Tillerson obviously would have no problem getting a job if he wanted one. And as a matter of fact, he had indicated he was getting ready to retire. And he got a, if I'm not mistaken, a $250 million golden parachute when he left Exxon. So he's not going to be hurting no matter which way you look at it. But our State Department obviously will. Now, as far as the further Russian connections, and there probably are more that I'm not even aware of, but you have Jared Kushner, who, along with Michael Flynn, met secretly with that same Russian ambassador at Trump Towers, but unlike a lot of other people, they didn't come in through the front door. Well, Jared probably did, but the ambassador Dan in and out of any consequence. So that secret meeting was apparently revealed because they were afraid that somebody was camped out on one of those side doors, got a picture of them, and if they didn't come clean, they were going to be busted, shortly. Then you have Carter Page, who is a confidant of Donald Trump, though Mr. Trump had attempted to deny it. The Trump campaign had, actually it was Donald Trump himself who had mentioned Carter Page as being one of his foreign policy wonks, and later on had to try to deny it, but there was video on him calling out the guy's name, so he really couldn't deny it but for so long. But this particular guy was on the Trump campaign payroll because they paid for a trip by Mr. Page to Russia. To do what? Your guess is as good as mine, but they tried to deny it later on, but they couldn't because the facts were all there and were documented. So those are just the people that have the Russian connections. But again, remember I mentioned being destroyed from the inside. Well, I draw your attention to at least 7 cabinet members. And these 7 cabinet members either are flat out idiots as far as running the operations that they have been confirmed for. Now, as far as normal intelligence, no, none of them are truly idiots. Maybe some are demented, but none of them are truly idiots. But as far as being able to do the job that they're assigned to do, some of them are basically non-functional, and others are there specifically to destroy the agencies that they're running. Now let me give you a rundown. First, on the secretaries that don't know their butts from a hole in the ground as far as their departments are concerned. You have Betty DeVos, who doesn't know a damn thing about public education. Her claim to fame is loving charter schools, particularly since she was highly invested in them. She happened to ruin the state of Indiana's educational system, but that wasn't enough. She decided that she was going to go to Michigan and did the same thing there. If you got any buddies from Michigan, they should be well aware of this lady. Rick Perry, well, we all know the oops comment, and he couldn't name the 3rd department that he wanted to close. And the funny thing about it, the department that he wanted to close was the Department of Energy, and guess which department he's the secretary of? The Department of Energy. And he does know oil and gas, but anything else, he falls woefully short on. Now, if he's an intelligent guy and knows that he doesn't know a damn thing about various other things, he'll get people in there that do know subjects such as nuclear, solar, wind, those type of energy sources. But Mr. Perry, I guess if you have your way, you'll put yourself out of a job. It really pains me on this one, but Dr. Ben Carson has no business running the Department of Housing and Urban Development because Mr. Carson has never had anything to do with housing or urban development. He was a lifelong surgeon who was on various board of directors in honorary basis, because the person who actually handles his financial affairs is Armstrong Williams, and I'm not even going into Mr. Williams. Now, finally, on the I don't know what I'm doing side, you have Ryan Zinke. Now, this man served honorably in the military, and as far as him being a decent person, I'm pretty much don't really have anything negative to say about him. What I can't say about him is he being the Secretary of the Interior. That has to do, obviously, with our forests and lakes and rivers and streams. This guy is not a pro-environment person. And that's pretty much about as much as I'll say about him. Now, let's go into the guys who are out there to destroy their individual departments. Let's start with Mr. I can't stand the EPA. I've sued them 17 times. And when I was the Attorney General of my state, I basically took every dime of funds from my state EPA so that they were an operation in name only, because they couldn't even pay a single employee to work for them. So there was a department there, it just wasn't staffed. And why did I do that? Well, my name is Scott Pruitt, and I am in the pocket of the oil and gas companies. I'm so much in their pocket that I refuse to answer FOIA requests. That's Freedom of Information Act request for letters. Sorry, folks, letters from the oil and gas industry. And this guy didn't even have the decency to take the formats of the letters, figure out exactly what they wanted to say and how they wanted it said, and reword it when he was making his complaints and filing his lawsuits against the EPA. All he basically did was he transcribed the letters onto his Attorney General stationery and shot them off to the EPA and to the various courts when lawsuits were being filed. So this guy, obviously, deep in the pocket of the oil and gas companies. And as I was stating, he ignored FOIA requests for those letters up until approximately 3 days before his confirmation vote was to take place. Now, the Democrats basically said the right thing. They asked for a delay for those letters to get out so that they could actually see what was in them. But as usual, the Republicans decided that they couldn't wait 3 days to get all of the information. This guy just had to be confirmed because it was a matter of national emergency that he be in place. Okay, next, Dan Coates. He is the director of national intelligence. Now, the thing that bugs me about him is he is on the record acknowledging that he wants to limit the power of his own department. Now, I don't know about you, but anybody that wants to have less authority to get stuff done versus having more authority to get stuff done, that kind of troubles me. That's like the guy basically shooting himself or attempting to shoot himself in the foot, but he still needs to walk around. Then we come to Mr. Tom Price, Health and Human Services Secretary. This is Mr. I don't give a damn about the little guy as far as health insurance is concerned. I'm going to ram through, or hopefully ram through, some legislation that is going to, number one, screw poor people, number two, screw older people, number three, screw disabled people. Basically, I'm out there to screw anybody that can't carry their own water. And if you're keeping up with the latest on the American Health Care Act, which the Republicans are going to attempt to ram through without so much as any floor debate in the House or in the Senate, no public commentary, no nothing, just read it, weep, and make a decision. You're either with us or against us, and that is just that. So, in basic conclusion for this group of people, it doesn't take a lot of Russian involvement and placing people into positions that they either hate and would actively work against, or place people in positions that they have no business being in to wreak havoc with the American government. And that's what Mr. Donald Trump is doing. Now, I didn't mention a couple of individuals whose pictures, well, actually one of the pictures is up there. See the gentleman on the lower left bottom, second from the left? That's Mr. Stephen Bannon. Mr. Bannon has gone on record as being anti-government. What I mean by anti-government? He believes that no government is too small and that this government needs to be greatly reduced, if not basically disassembled. He and his assistant, Mr. Steve Miller, who is well, he doesn't acknowledge it, but everybody else does, is a white supremacist. They're doing all they can to wreak havoc with the government and the people. They are coming out, especially Mr. Miller. He writes the majority of Mr. Trump's, you can call him radical if you want to, or you can call him ultra-conservative or alt-right or white supremacist-based speeches, which do nothing but embolden the Trump supporters, but they also enrage and infuriate the people who are not Trump supporters, but they don't really give a damn. Now, one other person who I'm going to mention, and then I'm going to close this out, is Mr. Paul Manafort. Now, Mr. Manafort was in Steve Bannon's position as the head of the Trump campaign. Mr. Manafort has a history of dealing with the Russians, and in particular, the former president of the Ukraine, who was a major Putin supporter. And there are rumors and some actual documents showing that Mr. Manafort got paid like millions of dollars that never happened to hit anybody's books. But I wonder if we did an audit on the Bank of Cyprus, if we would find an account for Mr. Bannon there. Probably. Well, Mr. Bannon Mr. Manafort got several visits from an individual by the name of Konstantin Kilmanik. He is a Ukrainian Russian national. And he got those visits during the Trump campaign, and specifically at the Republican National Convention, where they were drawing up the charter for they were drawing up the platform that the Republicans were supposed to, but not obligated to, run on. And the only thing that the Trump campaign raised issue with and pretty much rammed down the throats of the other Republicans on the platform committee was an easing of the language against Russia. What do I mean by that? Well, in their platform, the original language was support for the Ukraine and a willingness to provide the Ukraine with weapons, some of which were lethal, well, let's call it lethal assistance, in order to defend themselves against the Russians, who were obviously invading their country. Well, Mr. Kilimnik advised, apparently, Mr. Manafort what the Russian position was on that. And Mr. Manafort had one of the Trump people that was on the platform committee. I believe the gentleman's name was, give me a moment, I think I wrote it down.